In Fear and Hunger Termina, there's an incentive to kill as many enemies as possible to earn soul shards and learn more skills. Compare this to the first game, where many enemies drop nothing more than a sweaty loincloth and can't be beheaded to gain superpowers. It's a remarkably different dynamic, where the first game is more about choosing your battles and conserving your resources, while the second is a pure contest of strength. Literally. Well, I have a bloodlust to slake after being deprived of murder for a whole playthrough, so we're going on a rampage. I know this sounds identical to Ragnaldar's ending, but here's the thing. I don't just want to kill a lot of things. I want to kill everything. It's literally the difference between killing 11 enemies and all of them. If it's an enemy or person, it counts. They will be tracked via encounters, not how many are in said encounters. Otherwise, I could infinitely grind cave gnomes, which makes no sense. And doors don't count. They can rot in hell. By extension, this run means I can't have any party members whatsoever. I must kill them all. I'll make an exception for Lagarde for fun reasons, but I'm not allowed to use him in battle. No blood golems either. We trust no one but ourselves. Even though performing a marriage does result in a death of the ego and essentially disposes of a body, it's still not permitted. We're going by the rules of fuck, marry, kill here. No sources of infinite restoration are allowed either. I treat my Fear and Hunger as a survival horror RPG after all, so no Betelstone, Ring of Wraiths, or revisiting the Sylvian Orgy or Feast. I can take the free samples, but I can't save scum for endless health and affinity. Apart from all that, everything's legal. To challenge myself, I'll avoid damage over time effects and from using the black steel unless it's necessary. I like when boss fights last more than 3 turns. Oh, and we'll play on terror and starvation. I'm too bad for hard mode. Before we even begin the challenge, I have to conquer a different one. I need to determine exactly how many enemies are in the game, where they're found, and keep track of the list during the run. And as amazing as the Fear and Hunger wiki is, it doesn't have the ultra-precise information I need for the first game. So I need to dig up lots of this info on my own. That's partially my own fault though. I'm literally one of the wiki admins, so who else am I gonna blame? Because of this, I had to meticulously comb through every map in the game in RPG Maker to compile my list. Then I had to make a spreadsheet listing all enemies by enemy type, another by location, and then transcribe everything to the wiki myself. I would have felt guilty otherwise. Finally, I had to ensure the maximum number of enemies spawned in this run, as there's a handful that only have a chance to appear. I wasn't just going to brute force it with reloading saves. I respect my time at least a little bit, so I had to understand how this mechanic worked. To do this, I had to click on dozens of enemies in RPG Maker. Fortunately, this mechanic doesn't apply to the whole game, so I didn't need to check stuff like Mahabre and beyond very thoroughly. From there, I made a list of all the variables and switches that controlled these random spawns, and what they had to be set to. I chose my character and their backstory, saved the intro, and opened up my save editor. I adjusted the necessary values, netting me more than 10 possible kills. This includes enabling the Cave Dweller Massacre, which will probably be a bit controversial. In my eyes, it's the same result as defeating the Dwellers yourself, plus the 2 moonless guards that show up because of it. It also contributes to my side goal of making the hardest possible file. But there's an issue with this goal. You can't edit a variable that doesn't exist, and some of them aren't defined at the start of the game. They're only triggered upon entering a certain map. Thanks to this, I have to enter the inner halls before I can change the variables responsible for whether or not an extra prison guard and dark priest spawns. Technically, I didn't have to for the prison guard, since my save had layout C, which fails to check the variable and always spawns one. I had to investigate tons of things like that. It sucked. That concludes the hardest part of the challenge. If you want to try it yourself, I'll have a link to the save file and documentation for this run in the description. This includes a list with every possible enemy. Listing every final boss wouldn't have made sense. Remember that changes have to be made to the save file after starting it, so you'll need a save editor to guarantee the extra Dark Priest. So who do we want to play as for a run like this? We need someone with a strong starting kit and good late game potential. This leaves out 3 characters: Kahara is my personal favorite, but he's got no advantage in a battle. Enki sucks and I hate him, but more importantly, he can only equip light armor, which is a serious deal breaker in a solo run. Magic also kinda sucks. Ragnaldar's only got a single good skill in his tree, marksmanship, and you can't even start with it. Not to mention, the shortbow is almost as bad as the dagger in combat. It's of course great in the overworld, with marksmanship, otherwise it's garbage. This leaves Darce. She can start with the best shield in the game, a solid chestplate, armor leg guards, and powerful skills like fast attack or defense stance. In my eyes, she's the game's easy mode. But here's the thing, I don't want to play easy mode. I have an insatiable need to challenge myself, and frankly, I don't see her as the type to massacre every living being in the dungeons. Ragnaldar, on the other hand, he's already got an entire ending dedicated to exactly this. What if we played as him and truly completed his journey to eradicate the dungeons once and for all? Well, I'll tell you what happens. He dies. It absolutely does not matter what you try on this first screen. Ragnaldar is far too weak to solo 6 Jagged Jaws in Terror and Starvation. You can't just run away either. If you head into the dungeon's front entrance, only 2 hounds will chase you. The third just vanishes forever. If you go through the side entrance, all 3 hounds just vanish forever. The only choice is to kill all of them before moving on. You might have thought to kill the third Jagged Jaw, then go through the front entrance to store the other 2 for when you're stronger. But that doesn't work either. Even though the hounds will stay on the map forever if you enter the dungeons like this in Terror and Starvation, they will inexplicably vanish if you killed the third hound outside. Killing the other 2 will just cause 1 hound to go missing in the front, so it's just the third one that's bugged. Okay, well, combat isn't the only way to win an encounter. As we learned in my Limbless challenge, bear traps will instantly defeat any hounds that step on them. I don't even need to rely on barrel RNG, because Ragnaldar can start with one. I mean, it does cost me the ability to dash, but I can get a soulstone and arrows this way, so it's not all bad. Unfortunately for me, these hounds are just straight up immune to bear traps. Then how about the bow? The one good thing Ragnaldar has going for him. Yeah, that doesn't work unless you have marksmanship. You know, that skill you can't start with? The arrows literally do nothing. This is stupid. I can't play as who I want to, and it's pretty much just because of some oversights in the code. So, I made a community post vaguely explaining things. In it, I asked if I should do things legitimately and easily, or cheat here to play as who I want and make the run harder. The results were in favor of cheating to make it harder. So I edited my save to give myself 3 light blue vials to get past these Jagged Jaws. This had fewer side effects than using the debug tile at the start. With extensive testing, I found that it was extremely rare for me to beat them using the shortbow, so I had to start with the axe just to survive. I also assumed I had to use a bear trap to survive this encounter, since I'm operating under the assumption this isn't bugged, which meant giving up my dash. This means the only perks to my starting kit were a slightly better melee weapon, an additional 10 strength from playing as Raggy, and a soulstone. It was pitiful, but I had to make it work. Even with all these advantages, I died many times. I discovered you can't block their insta-kill coin attack. It's random which of the 2 do it, and sometimes I just whiffed my attacks. Put together, there was a whole lot of getting mauled to death. Adding insult to injury, I had to wait like 30 seconds for the hounds to spawn before each attempt, and was subjected to the worst sound effect each time. I eventually just muted my sound. On my winning attempt, I looted an explosive vial from the first crate. Then I lucked out with the hounds, allowing me to limp away a bloody mess, but still alive. I went through the front entrance and looted what I could while avoiding the prison guards. Unlike the Limbless challenge, I now fully understand the prayer mechanic, so this time I made sure to beeline for my Ulmer affinity in an effort to save torches and real-life sanity. The entrance circle was my first of 3 prayers. I went to the library next, where I got an ancient book and a Loving Whisper scroll. I did not use either for the moment. I went to the south room and got caught by a patrolling prison guard. This is a good point to shout out the mod I'm using. It's a graphical one called Immersive Censorship, and it's created by Platy Gems. Rather than scribbling over monster dongs with a black marker, they thoughtfully redesigned the sprites to hide their nudity. It's done in a way that fits the previous designs and recreates the game's art style extremely well. They were very thorough, covering every last sprite you can think of in and out of battle. Some things even get slight redesigns to accommodate this, which I'll point out. I can't recommend this mod enough, it's spectacular. Anyways, the prison guard fight went well. On the first turn, I disarmed him, guarded on the second, castrated him, hurt him, guarded, and then finished him. That's the process I go through for each and every guard right now. The only issue is if I miss when aiming for the cleaver, I'll be the one losing an arm instead. I can't afford that in this run, so it's better to avoid these fights for now. So naturally, I got into a fight against a ghoul 5 seconds later. I used Talk to kill him. If I used a melee attack, there's a chance it would have missed, and the ghouls will get off an attack as they die. He still dropped me to 1 HP though, so I had to avoid another fight at all costs. I walked out to the courtyard to grab a green and blue herb, healed my infections, and jumped down the well. I looted the best I could while avoiding the Maniba, but I left a bit early to play it safe. I headed to the Shakespeare room and slept in the Crow Maiden's bed. My freebie save was up. I'd have to work for the rest. Thank Ulmer I did, because shortly afterwards I had a close call with an elite guard. No idea how I survived that, but I probably would have choked if more was on the line. Right after, I examined a bookshelf and got one hell of a haul. I examined another and got an even better one. I literally didn't even know this was possible. Now, I did read all your comments on the pacifist video, and the vast majority prefer I just accept stupidly good luck like this. I will in this case with one stipulation. I'm not going to use the skill scrolls right away. Being able to bypass literally every requirement for such powerful skills less than 20 minutes into the run in exchange for nothing is actually insane. At the very least, I'd like to reach the Tomb of the Gods before allowing them, since that's the first place with guaranteed scroll drops. Crazy loot aside, I prayed to the Ulmer statue in the backyard, returned to the inner hall to defeat the 2 dark priests, and sacrifice the guy on the altar. This was the last prayer point I needed for my Ulmer affinity. Since I was in the area, I took the opportunity to rat out Buckman to Troder. This nets me 2 light blue vials, which I desperately needed and is the most direct way I can kill Buckman. I left the inner halls, and using the drops from the priests, I accessed the Testiche table and learned Blood Portal. Shortly after, I got my hands on a pipe. Sorry, Pinecone Pig, your services are no longer necessary. Using my explosive vial, I opened the entrance to the thicket from the backyard. Strangely, the hound that lives here was already dead. Apparently it shares the same encounter as the 3rd hound at the start. I'm still counting them as separate kills because this is clearly just a bug. Since this goes both ways, I guess you could argue killing this hound is an alternative solution to the first screen problem. I'm not giving up this save after that crazy book loot though. To play it safe, I took the Cockroach King's path in the thicket. This avoids most of the enemies there and takes less time. Sadly, I got unlucky with the Soul Stone near the king though. I carefully snuck past the Catacombs enemies, as I can't take them in a fight right now. Plus, since they're infected, disguises wouldn't work if I used them. Thankfully, I succeeded and managed to save Lagarde. Rather than keeping him in the party though, I was going to put Lagarde into stasis, so I had to sit around for about 10 minutes. At multiple points across the map, if a party member has a low enough mind value, they'll ask to take a break. Depending on your answers, or how many times this has happened, they'll temporarily leave the party. This has a chance to kill them when you leave the screen, but if you hand them some booze, they're guaranteed to be alright. And they won't rejoin the party until you speak to them a second time, which is what I'm exploiting. We'll come back for you later, buddy. Have fun. With that, I used a Book of Enlightenment to save. Because of how variables work in RPG Maker, I had to reopen a save editor at this point to change more of them. If a variable isn't defined in a game in a save, then it doesn't exist. You can't edit something that doesn't exist, so I have to initialize them in-game, which in this case is done by entering the inner chambers. Then next time I save, I can edit the variables controlling the chance spawns. Stuff like this is why I can't provide a fresh save file with maximum enemy spawns, just something close to it. For those extra curious, I'll have a download for all my save files from this run in the description. I did have to overwrite a bunch towards the end, but it's most of them. On that note, here's my enormous list of enemies. I meticulously went through every map I could think of to document them all. I noticed a couple were missing over the course of the run, so I had to adjust it as I went. During my next session, I had a goofy realization. Dude, wait, hold on. Dude, that's trippy. Right after, I encountered the first of many bugs in this run. So in order to maximize my kills, I need to rat out Buckman to Trotter, and then tell Sir Seymour about it. You can't directly harm Buckman, so I need someone else to do it for me. But for whatever reason, every time I went to Seymour, I was only getting the usual dialogue options. There was no choice to tell on myself. I came up with a bunch of theories on why this was happening. Maybe it was because I had to meet Seymour before betraying Buckman, or I had to talk to Trotter after blabbing. Well, I tried all that and had no luck. So when all else fails, I crack the insides of the game open and take a peek. I needed a specific switch to trigger in order to blab to Seymour. And I don't know why, but it doesn't activate as soon as you rat Buckman out. It's only when you exit the map after blabbing that it triggers. But here's the kicker. It only triggers on some exits. Random hole in the ground? Perfect. Main front entrance? No. Bad. Stupid. The meat tunnel exit also works. Of course, I was only using the front entrance in order to avoid the lizard in the meat tunnel and to reach Seymour faster through the well shortcut, so it never triggered. I love spaghetti. Fast forward a bit, and I managed to lose an arm to a prison guard. There's no way in hell I'm functioning without both arms this run, so this save file was as good as dead. But I encountered what I think was an interesting bug here. When entering the basement from the north, I suddenly got sucked into the Black Witch's pocket dimension. It normally only happens on this tile on this layout. Weird. When I reverted to my last save, it finally occurred to me I had the worst starting phobia in the game. Teratophobia, the fear of monsters and malformations. It should be pretty obvious why that's bad. Funnily enough, I initially had this mixed up with the best phobia, Rhabdophobia, which only applies to 3 rare enemies. That's why I rolled with this save. I genuinely wasn't trying to torture myself, but it is possible this was a Freudian slip. Thanks to this, I took 50% more damage and had 50% less evasion against 27 of the game's enemy types. This included almost every basic enemy in the game, as well as a bunch of major bosses. For reference, the second most prevalent phobia is erotophobia, which only applies to 16 enemies. So this was a pretty big deal, especially since I couldn't have party members to tank damage for me. This helps explain how I spent the next 40 minutes repeatedly dying in the prisons trying to wipe all the enemies out. If you kill every enemy on the screen, then it's perfectly safe to sleep in a bed. Saves are your strongest asset in these games, so having an endless supply of them is pretty damn good. The issue I was having is that sometimes I whiffed my attacks when aiming for a prison guard's cleaver. That pretty much guaranteed I'd lose an arm, which was effectively a game over. Sometimes they'd also just outright kill me thanks to my crappy Garen phobia, but after throwing myself at the problem enough, I eventually lucked out. I'm not sure there was really any other option with how weak I was. I used a blue vial and finished off the cave gnomes and ghoul. I just had to face tank them. I fought them all back to back to save on green herbs, since I had rotten luck with them. I also got a soulstone from the chest, which was a big help. Next, I visited the Black Witch's lair for some complimentary wine before returning to the prison to kill the remaining stuff. I forget why I did that. Then I slept since I wanted to try killing Kahara. Good thing I saved, because I severely underestimated him. Once I realized that was a lost cause, I moved on. Clearly, I needed a power boost to get anything done. The simplest one I could think of was the Shark-Tooth sword in the mines. I knew I could curse my axe for a similar damage boost, but it wouldn't gain the otherworldly attribute, which is half the point. Plus the axe deals blunt damage, which kinda sucks. Before heading off, I opened the catacomb shortcut, and in a crate I found my first accessory, which was one of the few items I banned. I entered the mines through the catacombs and went backwards through the minor specters. When I reached my destination, I noticed the ballista guard was missing. It turns out the guard and lizardmen on this map are mutually exclusive and can't coexist. I did not immediately realize this, and it took well over an hour for me to figure this out. When you start the game, this is one of the things it decides. Even if you change the variables in the save editor, only one of the enemies will be there. Luckily for me, I got the Lizardman, so I was just able to walk in and grab the weapon without a fight. I exited the mines through the front entrance as I couldn't stab ghosts yet. On my way out, I paid my respects to Sylvian's massive dong and slaughtered everything around it, minus the cave mother. I did steal her soulstone though thanks to the layout I had. After leaving, I cursed my new blade, then cashed in my free cuddle coupon for complimentary medical services. Then I saved, locking my progress in. With access to an endless save point, I cracked open the ancient book. I was going to get something out of it through brute force. I didn't min-max the best result though, I just took whatever the first outcome was, which ended up being Blood Golem. Literally the only outcome with a banned spell. I could have kept resetting for Black Orb, but I already felt bad about save scumming, so I carried it on. I also used a Book of Forgotten Memories, which netted me marksmanship. Very good, but completely useless without a bow. I had a rematch with Gahara. Still died. So I shifted gears and returned to the basement to kill a couple blobfish for their pale skin. Using this, I crafted a ghoul disguise, which works on night lurches. It's handy for the guy in the mines. Before heading there, I did some looting. I don't know why, but during the process, I decided to turn the stove on to grill some meat. This act was my undoing. I entered the caves below with a dying torch and stumbled into the darkness. And I'll let the rest of the clip speak for itself. Boss will chomp my head off. Okay, so that's great. Okay, that's great. That's great. That's so great. I don't have a tinder box because I just used it to grill meat, didn't I? Oh my god. Guys. 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 Oh my god, I had the vaguest sense of direction where I was.
How the fuck did you do that?
I knew continuing this save was a death sentence. I'm not good enough to beat this game blindfolded. I tried making it to the Cave Dweller village, but the mage caused me to go blasting off again, so I continued from the save where I used the ancient book. This time, I did things differently. I didn't waste a million torches, I told on myself to see more asses, and this time I got 3 eagle crest shields from the armor drops. I don't know whether to be happy or mad about that. I even found an extra torch, which was quite the relief. But in my efforts to preserve as many torches as possible, I forgot about something extremely important. There's more. I just died. I just died trying to sit. I'm not seething. I'm not seething. I'm not seething. I'm not. There's a small chance I will find an herb around here. Don't do this to me, please, please, please. Tinder boxes are good, but it's not what I want. Neither the pine cone or throwing knife or the... Ah! I think... I need to make peace sawing off my leg.
No! You do have torches.
Yes. There is a stick here. Mayhaps. Well, the game has finally gotten me to fear and hunger, so... Miro, please tell me you hid one. Please, I'm... Okay. 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 I love not having dash. I love not having dash. Well, at least I got dinner. I've been humbled so much by this run. So, I don't know how I didn't realize this at the time, but if I had just loaded my last save, I only would have lost 10 minutes of playtime. That's how long it was from loading the file to stepping on the nail. Instead, this blunder cost me multiple hours in Mahabre by removing my dash to save 10 minutes. Please laugh at my misery. Someone has to. My new plan was to enter Mahabre as soon as possible. So I went to the entrance, only to realize I didn't have the Cube of the Depth. Suddenly, I was at a complete loss. I stared at my inventory and wondered if there was anything that could get me past the yellow mage. And then I saw it. I headed straight to the mage and threw a knife right at his face. And it missed. So I repeated the process until it worked. I looked into this afterwards, and it seems the throwing knife is considered a physical attack, so I could have just used my sword. I guess the throwing knife is useless after all. I created a portal and went back to save since there was another yellow mage just ahead. I killed it once and got a bad drop, so I reset for something a little better. In order to maximize both kills and loot, I didn't approach Schrodinger's Darce. Both her and the cave dweller pummeling her won't be capable of death until the player witnesses the event. Instead, I looted the village and kept my distance from the moon guards, completely forgetting I could equip a disguise and be fine. Suddenly, it occurred to me I could reach ritual circles for more affinity with Sylvian, so I said my prayers. In that vein, I rescued the girl. Coincidentally, I seem to have gained some Grogroth affinity, and the girl went to live on a nice farm. I went to the Testige table to learn Loving Whispers at long last, and realized I could have learned it ever since cashing in my Cuddle coupon. I was thinking of how it requires 2 affinity in Termina. Me? Making my life harder than necessary? I would never! With healing magic under my belt, I set my sights on the salmon snake. Thankfully, this guy is one of the very few enemies that don't trigger teratophobia. Which is a little weird since there's no way in hell a medieval dude knows what an axolotl is, but whatever. I needed this. The magical sword also helped. I died a couple times, but I won on the third. A salmon snake soul will prove essential as always, with its full limb protection and whatnot. To save time, I killed the prison guards in the dungeon entrance and slept in a bed. A dead body tried to ambush me, but it didn't do a very good job. Emboldened by a save point, I fought Isaiah. I died. Then I did it again and won. This nets me a nice new mask and some treasure maps. In the prison, the coin flip while sleeping had returned. Nothing spawned if I failed it, so all it did was waste my time. It was just weird, so I wanted to mention it. I proceeded to defeat Kahara, which took a few attempts. I got the absolute worst drop from him. I didn't realize that, so I saved over my file. Then I suddenly remembered disguises work on moonless guards. I discovered an amusing bug with the Immersive Censorship Mod. It looks like I have no limbs while holding a torch in a prison disguise, so I returned to the village for the Cube of the Depths. I was prepared to enter the ancient tomb. As a result, I fought the infected night lurch and prison guard in the catacombs. They got the better of me a couple times, but third time's the charm. I also really like the redesign of the night lurch. Great work, Bloody Gems. In the ancient tomb, I took care of all 5 bloody men. It was pretty easy, but did cause slight injury. Nothing some sex magic can't fix. I did the puzzle in the past and visited the Tomb of the Gods. I rummaged through the scrolls and got a real game changer, Steel. Critter blood magic also, but magic is stupid, so I don't care. Unsurprisingly, the 3 blobfish did not survive my visit, nor did this weird jellyfish. I returned to the prisons and saved. Now that I had Steel, I took out the 3rd Dark Priest in the inner halls, hoping for a Book of Enlightenment. He didn't drop one, but I did get priest robes, which was nice. More importantly, I wanted something from Sir Seymour, Leg Sweep. Stealing from him in combat nets a scroll for it. Yes, I forgot I already had one. At least this is cooler. I did manage to beat him and snag the scroll, but I immediately died to an elite guard. So we took a detour and killed the lizardman in the blood pit for a hard leather vest. I did use save scumming magic to ensure it dropped. This is probably also a good place to touch on the Nasara encounter here. If you rummage through the meat piles, you end up triggering an unwinnable fight against the beheaded wizard himself. After the first turn, he summons a demon that will instantly kill you after 3 more turns pass. What's interesting is you can actually prevent this from happening. Due to, say it with me, a bug in the code, Nasara can be stunned by throwing rocks at him. He's normally immune to the concussed status, but rocks technically inflict a different kind of concussion, the one intended for players, not enemies. So with fast attack, it's possible to stunlock him without a single party member. This allows you to wail on him near endlessly, but if you do that, you'll eventually discover something. Nasara may have HP, but even if it reaches 0, he never dies. The KO'd status is never applied in such an event, so he is truly impossible to kill even though his HP is in the negatives. That is all to say, I will ignore him. I just think it's neat and wanted to share. Anyways, back to reality. I came back to rob and kill Seymour asses for real. I tried to inspect Troder's body afterwards, but it was mysteriously absent. Then I got rid of that pesky human Hydra, and redid the Dark Priest. He didn't even drop a robe this time. In exchange, I got super lucky with the Elite Guard fight, and basically left unscathed. I saved after. With Seymour gone, I could safely enter Mahabre. He was the last enemy I was worried would vanish once I progressed. In Mahabre, it was crucial I fought the Lord of Flies carrying Jean. If you ignore it, he just vanishes forever, so I had to fight him right after entering to ensure he dies. I tried, and died. That was for the best because I realized Darce would probably die if I entered Mahabre. I knew I didn't have to fight her directly, but I wanted to since stealing from her nets me 30 silver coins for 3 mind elixirs later. So I went over, beat the cave dweller, and robbed her blind afterwards. That left me close to the max coin stack, so I held off on looting her body. On the way out, I killed the night lurch in the mines and went to go sleep in the inner halls, where I said something very funny. Watch there be like some missed switch in the game and then Troder gets me. Then I returned to Jean and died to the Lord of Flies' singular fly. Clearly, I needed a way to tank some hits if I was going to get through this guy. So I decided to go fight Enki. That may sound random, but he's holding a very valuable item I desperately need. After Enki repeatedly kicked my ass, I realized I was making a mistake. If I started the God of the Depths questline, I could kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I could max that affinity and get what I wanted from Enki at the same time. But in order to start that quest, I needed to learn mastery over insects, and the only way to do that was by using an empty scroll. I had plenty of those, but nothing to write with. So I now had to pay Shakespeare a visit. He has a chance to drop either a quill or empty scroll when you steal from him. If I just reset until I got a quill, this scheme would work. I slipped in the prisons to streamline attempts, and actually got a quill on my first try. Unfortunately, I died a few seconds later. Lesson learned. On my next attempts, I had the hard leather armor equipped. It reduces fire damage by 75%, making fire laughably weak. With that, I held my ground against Shakespeare. It took 4 steel attempts until I got the quill. Now that my empty scrolls were functional, I cashed one in for mastery over insects. I saved in the inner hall, getting a first try coin flip yet again. How convenient. I hit up the Cockroach King, killed the butterfly, got my new quest, and headed over to Enki. I was on a roll, and I figured I could beat him without saving. And I was right, but just barely. His stuns were brutal. I returned to claim my rewards from the Cockroach King, and he wouldn't acknowledge me. He just asked me to kill Enki, which I already did. I wasn't sure what exactly was causing this, so I decided to go save on another slot to see if I could fix the issue. Then the inevitable happened. Are you I knew it. If Seymour kills Troder, the game doesn't properly kill Troder. In its eyes, he's technically still alive. And when he is, he'll scoop up anyone stupid enough to sleep near his chambers. That's me. I'm the stupid one. This is clearly a bug, and Troder is clearly dead in reality. So I'm not using this to say challenge failed or anything. It's just poetic that I failed a quest for a bug to bug before dying to a bug. This game is held together with duct tape and prayers. I cracked open RPG Maker and tried to get to the bottom of what happened. Long story short, I killed Enki in the wrong place. You have to get him to move to the catacombs, then kill him in order to complete the Cockroach King's quest. Okay, cool. Before repeating everything, I killed the remaining Manibas since I'd get poisoned soon. I then annoyed Enki enough to leave the inner halls and taught myself Phase Step. I entered the thicket, squashed the first floor mumblers, and started the king's quest. Using Phase Step, I grabbed the soul stone across the gap. I beat up the butterfly, received my second cockroach task, and made sure to save in the highly secure prisons. In an attempt to make the most of my single white vial, I went to clear out the rest of the thicket. During this, I fought the assassin Spectre, and I literally died to an attack 1 point higher than my health. The Broken Bones debuff genuinely killed me here. When I returned, I popped a white vial before the assassin, as I'd learned a nearby insect gives you one for free. That made enough of a difference for successful stabbing ghost stabbing. The infected mumblers and greater mumbler were the usual strategy. Pop the pimple and move on. I got my hands on another free soulstone and sliced the second god heart. When I dropped out of the thicket, I walked over to Enki and recreated the Limitless challenge. He lost. Also, fun fact, the skeletons he summoned can be fought on their own by casting necromancy on one and failing the coin flip. I considered requiring this for the challenge, but it's reliant on RNG, and you can just sacrifice them for a similar result. I told the king of my exploits and was rewarded with the depth affinity I craved. So naturally, I used my newly obtained soulstones to go claim Darce's soul. Yeah, the affinity was actually just a side goal. What I really wanted from Enki was the ever-watching talisman. When you're practically afraid of every enemy in the game, being able to completely remove your phobia is extremely valuable. But I still need my limbs, so that's where Defense Stance comes into play. For 3 turns after using it, you have the perfect guard status. It prevents pretty much all limb loss, and provides a 50% boost to evasion for 5 turns. I think the evasion doesn't work in most encounters, but the limb protection was the key part. With that all behind me, I saved. Right after, I used my last empty scroll to gain a short bow. Thanks to marksmanship, I could now kill most enemies with a single shot. Even though that was an option, I fought this body snatcher in close quarters to steal a soulstone. I knew that his right arm 1 inflicts paralysis each turn, but I overlooked the fact his knife causes critical state. I realized that before getting myself killed, so I ran away and returned with the Sammy soul. The plan worked at the cost of some damage. With my new stone, I learned one of the best spells in the game, Locust Swarm. It stuns all enemies at once for 2 turns. Paired with Fast Dance, you can effectively make that 4 turns. Even without it, it's still really good. The only downside is it costs a ton of mind, and gaining Depth's affinity is a pain in the ass. I saved, returned to the Tomb of the Gods to rob the second body snatcher, and snagged the king's passage key. I continued towards Mahabre in the darkness, somehow dodging the bear traps. I was trying to preserve my surplus of torches since I could still see a little. I didn't want to loot the city for more torches since I had the max number of coins. When I approached Jean, I had my bow at the ready, but nothing was happening. Before disaster struck, I realized I forgot to bind shift on my controller, and just press shift normally. I have some wrist pain issues with my left hand, so I have funky bindings to play these games one-handed. Here's the layout to those curious. Maybe it'll help a goon in need. To avoid accidentally rescuing Jean, I avoided inspecting her for an unnecessary amount of time. Probably could have just left the screen and come right back, but better safe than sorry. Her loot is mid anyways. I went to the past to avoid the scarab by the Tower of Endless, and returned to the present at the foot of the tower. Then I saved in Mahabre for the first time of many. I wanted Sir Cyril's spectacular loot, so I headed back to the center square, and entered the west building in the present. I finally had to give up a torch, and gun down a Lord of Flies. In the basement, I approached Sir Cyril for a fight. I could have actually killed him with a short bow, but you can steal a fencing scroll from him in battle, aka fast attack. As if dropping the best armor in the game wasn't enough. I equipped the goods, and went to the past. I fought 3 Uteri on the way to the basement. I equipped the talisman to reduce damage, and just healed the infections with the Sammy Soul after battle. Afterwards, I had reached him. The single most beautiful creature in all of the dungeons. The bug-eyed figure. This little guy sells what is practically full heals for just 10 coins in infinite supply. As long as you have the cash, he can provide. Same for soul stones, which I also bought plenty of. It wasn't explicitly part of the challenge, but I wanted to try getting all the souls for Raggy's ending. And who knows, maybe they'll come in handy. Now that I'd relapsed on my crippling elixir addiction, I began searching every crate and barrel in the city for my next fix. During the looting spree, I found the passages of Mahabre and unearthed the first hidden chest. The transmutation spell is super banned for literally just giving you infinite mind, health, and food, but the water walking spell is very much required for this run. I saved at the tower and returned to the cave dweller village for Darce's lunch money. This is where it occurred to me that if the ghouls can still be revived, then they aren't dead in a sense. So we skinned all of them to prevent that and learned necromancy to sacrifice the skeletons. I was extremely mature and respectful about it.
Sacrifice?
I may be a magic hater in this game, but Black Orb has its uses. So I learned that, plus Flock of Crows. Then I saved. I know, I do that a lot. I'm an anxious person. I picked up some groceries on the way to the library, and somehow got into a fight with a baby while on the ground floor. While looting the place, I ended up hitting the jackpot with empty scrolls all over again. I don't need any more right this minute, but that's great to have in reserve. I grabbed the Book of Enlightenment from the Hall of Gods and opened the shortcut to the Temple District. Along the way, I took care of some of the enemies, but not all of them. I hoovered up some herbs and saved at the tower. Now that I had the passages of Mahabre, I wanted to make the most of it, so I returned to the mines, stabbing all the ghosts in my path. I strolled up to the trapped sword and pulled it out. I tried calling my girlfriend over to look at the cool interaction, and she arrived just in time to see the cave collapse on me. I didn't realize it was on a timer. I thought the cave-in happened when you walked away. Oh well. On my second attempt, I didn't waste any time and read the passages of Mahabre before the cave-in happened. I looted as much as I could, then came back to reality, but I realized I hadn't killed the lizardman by the entrance, and I could see new ghosts on the other side of the rock. So I phase-stepped past the rubble and apparently broke reality. All the fallen boulders just vanished and my screen started shaking endlessly. The ceiling never quite fell though. So I ran over to the lizardman and left the screen. When I returned, the mines collapsed. Okay, cool. As a palate cleanser, on my next attempt, I decided to first kill the elite guard in the catacombs. That was something different. I tried shooting him, which did nothing. And I tried using a bear trap on him, which also did nothing. Can literally anything work in this game? Flash forward a few attempts, including one where I let the lizardman chop my arm off, and I was left looking like Raggy here. I eventually succeeded and could now explore the caved-in mines. It opens up a new area on the right side where you can get a bunch of herbs and loot the rest of the Assassin Spectre's body. His armor has the best otherworldly defense in the game, but sucks in any other situation. He also has a Yagetsu amulet, which adds a flat 15% crit chance to your weapon. With the black steel equipped, you literally have an 89% chance to do triple damage. It's stupidly overpowered and why I say magic sucks in the first game. Even without the amulet, the sword isn't too hard to obtain and has a 74% crit chance. Miles better than Black Orb, and it doesn't cost mind. Because of how overpowered the black steel is, I'm only going to use it if I desperately need it. I'll be wielding the blue sin instead, which I got thanks to passages of Mahabre during the cave-in. If I had a ghoul or skeleton pull it out, the sword would have been lost forever. One other result of the cave-in is that the deeper thicket and the mines are now connected. Probably to prevent a soft lock, but it's still a cool shortcut. I used it to leave and saved my progress. Next, I wanted to fight the Crow Mauler. I was finally strong enough to take on just about anything, and it was time to prove it. I equipped the Iron Mask for blindness protection, and the ever-watching Talisman for regular protection. The Crow Mauler poses no threat to your limbs, apart from your skull, but the Salmon Snake Soul won't fix that one. To minimize his peck chances, I used Defense Stance and then blinded him with his crows. Despite that, all his other attacks hit me 100% of the time, so I still took a decent beating. Not an issue with all my healing, so it was a straightforward fight. This netted me the Crow Mauler's Soul, which boosts physical damage by 30%. Pretty nice. On the way out, I claimed the Iron Shakespeare's Soul, which reduces all physical damage by 30%. It could theoretically be useful in a fight where I'm not scared. Spoiler alert, this never happens. Finally, I claimed the Miasma with the Crow Mauler's Key before saving. As cool and iconic as this weapon is, it's painfully mid in my opinion. It's really only handy in a large party, or if obtained early on with the leg sweep door exploit. The black steel is otherwise far stronger and easier to obtain in most cases. Not to mention, it won't cause your party to turn on you, the Miasma can't stab ghosts, nor can it be cursed. Speaking of stabbing ghosts, I had to head north and do that in the locked prison cell. You can only open it by forcing it open, and my options were pretty slim with no party members. The Miasma paired with the Crow Mauler's Soul wasn't enough, nor Black Orb, so I had to resort to leg sweep cheese to get it open. In post, I can confirm this wasn't required. You can legitimately open this door solo by using Chains of Torment, a spell learned by inspecting Shambhara's corpse in the present after his boss fight. It always does at least 900 damage, and the door has 800 health. What I did wasn't even against my rules, it's just cheesy and I'm lactose intolerant. Anyways, the ghosts appear after defiling the Scissorman's work, so I fought them. This is where I learned the Miasma doesn't inflict otherworldly damage, and I died. I decided to use the Blue Sin from then on. No, I did not ever curse it, I'm not made of soulstones. To prevent whiffing the attacks and dying to the ghosts, I wanted to get eyeglasses. I was convinced they always dropped in Nazi's lab, so I went there next. This finally meant it was time to fight the old knight. I equipped the Salmon Snake Soul, used Fast Dance, and slowly knocked his armor off. When his ghost buddy showed up, I used Locust Swarm to take a bit less damage. Otherwise, it was attack, heal, and repeat. I got a marksmanship scroll and a spider shield inside. No eyeglasses. But 4 empty scrolls relieved my pain. I healed up and saved. Then popped by the secret lab. This netted 2 additional lizardmen kills and a scroll of combustion. I never used it. Before killing the second lizardman, I stole 10 coins from him for another mind elixir. I saved, then used an empty scroll to give myself a priest robe. This seems stupid, but it's technically a good idea. I used a second empty scroll, but partway through changed my mind, so I just gave myself another empty scroll to avoid wasting one. I love that's even possible. Then I did some stuff which didn't matter because I died while trying to rob the Black Witch. I forgot she had Black Orb, and it's way stronger on players than enemies. I returned with a plan in hand. I stunned her with Locust Swarm, took out her arms, thiefed her, and finished the job. Then I went back in time to go punch babies. Partners in Time sure is different than I remember. On my way out, I grabbed the second treasure chest for 70 coins, further enabling my reckless spending habits. I saved, fought the Harvestman, and survived through dumb luck. I did more shopping and decided it was finally time to fight the Cave Mother. It's a pretty hard fight, so I had to be sure to prepare and oh, it's over. I returned to stab the hallway ghost from earlier, then visited the Hexen for some new skills, lockpicking and On Guard. I hate to say it, but I had no idea just how powerful On Guard is, so I didn't really take advantage of it. I'll elaborate on that later, though. With that, I saved and took a break. When I returned, it was time for me to visit the King's Passage. This is where the buff demon guy I mentioned in the cut content video originates from, so sorry for the misinformation there. And same for mistaking the molded enemies for an animation of the tormented one. I really should have refreshed myself in the first game before making that video. Anyways, while looting the passage, I got 3 torches, which was extremely good. Rather than risking a fight, I shot the body snatcher instead. From a chest, I got yet another empty scroll. I've never been so lucky with these. Makes up for all the rest, I suppose. Before leaving, I face-stepped past some rubble for more pots and barrels. I was doing everything I could to try and get my hands on more torches, considering I was wasting twice as many without dash. On the way out, I grabbed book pages 3 before blowing open the shortcut. I returned to the same area in the present with face step. The chests are considered the same, but these pots and barrels aren't, which means more loot for me. This is also another way to kill the harvestmen found in the passages of Mahabre. They're considered the same enemy, but it only appears after killing the skin granny, and its walk cycle is broken here, probably a result of this being an exploit. While I attempted to get back on the intended path with phase step, I screwed up my teleports and wasted a bunch of mind fixing things. Not the end of the world, but that sucks. I saved and prepared to fight the old guardian. For this fight, it's crucial you have a helmet that prevents the concussion status, or he'll stunlock you to death. The Gaunt Knight's armor is perfect for this, but the Penance armor also works. Those are the two most accessible and effective armors. After the first couple attempts, I learned chopping his legs off, blinding him, and using defense stance all did absolutely nothing. So when I returned for the third and final time, I just focused on killing him quickly. Thanks to a lucky crit, that's exactly what happened. That netted me the Old Guardian's Soul, which revives you at the end of a turn once before vanishing forever. I actually grabbed it later, but I'm disjointed enough as is, so let's just say I grabbed it now. Not like I'm using it anytime soon. Now that I was pretty strong, it was time to go around the map and start checking off my list of enemies. I started with the Scarabs. The strat with them was to equip the eyeglasses and wail on them with the blue sin, since they're weak to otherworldly damage. It was crucial they died before the end of turn 2, so they wouldn't melt my real-ass goddamn sword. During the process, I finally looted Jean's body for 2 blue vials. A little overcautious, I know. On my way through town, I donned a prison disguise and shuffled across the floor menacingly. It made shooting down the moonless guards a lot funnier. They were the perfect candidates for the short bow. Even if I could defeat them in one turn, they always get off at least one attack, so defeating them outside of combat is the only way to avoid taking damage. I used the same strategy for the remaining Lord of Flies too. I had tons of arrows to use. I looted the alleys by the Temple of Torment for some herbs and squashed a few more scarabs. In case you don't know, it's possible to loot a scarab's nest. It's just a bit wonky. You can't examine the very back tile. If a scarab is somehow still in the hole, a coin flip will occur to see if it bites your arm off. You can also pacify scarabs with mastery over insects, but that's a non-option for me. I could have stunned them for a turn though, which I forgot about. While in the area, I jumped down the pit to the secret lab to grab the husk. This led into the Temple of Torment in the present, where I nabbed a soulstone and squished 3 spiders. I also got another empty scroll. This is getting ridiculous. I finished off the scarab on the roof, and next door I stomped the spider and raised Poop the skeleton. I dumped Poop in the library, and saved. I returned to the inner halls, as I'd forgotten to grab the first book page for Demon Seed. This was just to cover my bases. Since I'm creating life, it's a bit redundant, but I'll personally count it the first time. While in the area, I learned Dash. I know it won't do anything for me, but maybe I'm wrong. Please work. I want speed. Back in Mahabre, I continued clearing things out. Interestingly, this infected Lord of Flies was already dead when I arrived. It seems to be another case of sharing a switch with a different enemy, like that Jagged Jaw in the thicket. Apart from that, it was business as usual. Stomping spiders and sacrificing children to eldritch abominations. Not long after, I thought it would be a good idea to learn Escape Plan. I then learned the skill is completely exclusive to Kahara. There's no other way to obtain it, not even through empty scrolls, so I guess if you want to do an all-skills run, Kahara is your guy. I considered doing that on the side in this run, but I had enough to worry about as is. Even without that, I spent over 25 hours on this run. And don't even get me started on the editing. Also, I want to point out I left the school here in case I needed to form a marriage down the road. That may seem strange, but not everything left in the run is going to be trivial, far from it. I had to keep my options open for an emergency. But on that note, I want to quickly showcase what a marriage looks like in this mod. It's neat. Anyways, it was time for a nap. In my dreams, those priest robes I summoned finally came into play. I got an empty scroll and opium powder for my cosplay. So it's always worth it to use a scroll for this. It's free opium. I looted more of Dream Rondon, but ended up getting spotted by a villager. Rather than heading straight back, I left to take care of other enemies instead. I started with the catacombs, and then took out the red men in the past versions of the ancient tomb. They weren't very tough. In the Cave Dweller village, I shot the 2 moonless guards and went to go save. I visited the Temple of Torment, took out the red man there, and hooked up the husk to the wine chamber. The tormented one came to check things out, which resulted in a very lengthy battle. Then I left the room to go do the real battle. Since I was completely alone, I opted for the strategy I used last time. Ouch balls to the face. The inner ring has absolutely no magical evasion, so you can use spells to bypass the fight's gimmick entirely. Apart from that, it's your typical attack and heal as needed. After emerging victorious, I tried to shoot the newly spawned White Angel. Apparently that doesn't work, so I fought it normally, which translates to a black orb to the heart. I'd run out of soul stones, so I used an empty scroll to give myself one. The White Angel soul is real handy, granting double turns at all times while equipped. While I can just use Fast Dance for a similar effect, sometimes that one extra turn can make all the difference. With that, I saved and locked this progress in. I was due for another nap. I'll let past Connor explain what he was doing here.
Based off what I learned in the Limbless challenge, I know I can kill all 5 hounds here. It's going to suck.
Using RPG Maker, I could see where exactly each of the 5 hounds would spawn. This made things drastically easier, as it enabled real planning instead of panicked reflexes. Even then, getting 5 fast-moving enemies to walk over specific tiles is pretty easy to screw up, so I used a Book of Enlightenment to speed attempts up. The process pretty much boiled down to memorizing a series of inputs. But as I improved, an issue started to become clear. The bear traps stopped working at some point, and I had no idea why. I was placing fresh traps down, but they were already sprung. It was more than just a visual glitch, too. The hounds could run over them without issue. It seems to always start with the 4th hound, but if I placed extra traps, it could happen even sooner. Then it clicked. The game wasn't creating a new bear trap each time I placed one. It was moving an existing one around. It was even more obvious when I spammed them. I went through the code to confirm this, and as far as I can tell, that's exactly what's happening. So in practical terms, you're limited to 3 bear traps per map, and there is absolutely no way around this. Even if you leave and re-enter the map, the game remembers which were used. I wouldn't even call this a bug either, it's kind of just a programming shortcut Orange took. What is a bug is the fact that my short bow does absolutely nothing to these hounds. When they touch you, you're kicked out of the dream. Fighting them is a non-option. So yeah, challenge technically failed. But come on, who cares about some stupid dream hounds? Let's see what else we can do with this run. Comparatively, the skin granny was a joke. I wore my face protection, chopped the many arms off, and went to town. After my victory, I got some well-earned rest. Up next was Volte, the easiest of the new gods. In the comments of the Limbless challenge, you guys informed me that the Purifying Talisman removes the curse status, so I tried to incorporate that into my strategy.
Wait, what? So that was a lie.
Well, that sucks, but it should still be pretty easy. I actually bothered with the Jingasa gear this time, and it's a good thing I did, because it saved my ass. I couldn't have just equipped a Soul Devour necklace either, or my precious limbs would have been blown off. So this is the one fight where the armor set really shines. Now that I defeated a bunch of the new gods, there were a few new enemies scattered around Mahabre, the first of which were 2 very normal scarabs.
Wait, what? I thought 2 of them... What? Where's the hole? What?
It was otherwise 2 easy fights. The same applied to the Harvestman in the same spot in the past, and the one down below as well. With that, I defeated absolutely every enemy up to this point, 2 Dreamhounds withstanding. So I marched up to the Nameless Guardian and kicked his ass. Then I walked down the halls of the Golden Temple, spoke to Francois, and took care of his stupid dogs. I missed every bear trap. I sliced the final depths organ and went to the past. I returned to the Golden Temple and prepared to fight Francois in his prime. I swapped my chestplate for a hard leather vest and kept the Salmon Snake soul equipped. He did have a sword after all. Ironically, his first phase turned out to be much harder than his first. Despite looking so human-like, Francois still triggers teratophobia, so I was taking 50% more damage from him. In the first phase, his cutlass does pretty high slashing damage, which was my Achilles heel here. But once I sliced that arm off, it got way easier. The second phase was a breeze, even with the phobia damage. The hard leather armor absorbs 75% of fire damage, so it was an easy victory. I chopped all his bits off, then beheaded him. Rather than claiming my spot on the throne, I turned around and left. There is still more to do in the gauntlet. I saved before heading out and snagged the witch's soul. If I messed this up, there'd be no going back. I'll let past Connor explain what he was doing.
There's a little trick you can do after entering the gauntlet. These 3 tiles here control the door exit. And as long as I don't step on these 3 tiles, I'm good. So I just have to remember it's where... I mean, just this approximate area. I should just phase step from, like, these stairs to there, pretty much.
And even if the gate's shut behind you, it's still possible to exit the gauntlet by dying to a Moonless Guard. You'll lose your legs, but that's probably useful in some asinine challenge I might subject myself to. I didn't use this method since it means I can't kill one of the guards, and I do enjoy having legs.
I'm just gonna phase step past these. I never want to try and deal these goddamned guillotines again.
The main challenge here is the double Crowmauler fight. Rather than going in with a plan, I just assumed it would be easy like the first fight. It was not. When I came back, I swallowed my pride and used a Book of Enlightenment. The strategy was the same as the regular Crowmauler. Maximize my chances of dodging Peck, then wail on the torso. It took a few tries for me to successfully blind both heads, and when I finally did, it was pretty straightforward. When I reached the boulder room, all I could think of was the limbless challenge, so I used another Book of Enlightenment. This was completely unnecessary, as they're extremely easy to avoid with any number of legs. But then I forgot about this lizard mage who blasted my leg off, so actually yay for trauma-induced saves. The lizards went down from arrows the same as the guards. I had a scare with a meditating one, where it played the hurting animation, but didn't do anything. I was afraid it bugged my game out. In reality, it did absolutely nothing. After that, I was free to leave the gauntlet. I just had to make sure to phase step out. I returned to the tower and saved. Using my empty scrolls, I summoned another book and gave myself a butterfly soul. Raggy's quest was complete, but mine was not. I checked Lagarde out of stasis, then returned to that ghoul I left behind. You can't skin this one, so I had to revive it and sacrifice him in the tower. Apparently, demon kids don't exhaust the circle, because spaghetti making this possible. With everything on this mortal coil completed, it was time to take my place on the throne of Ascension. Alongside Leggy, that is. I can stop being coy now. Funger veterans should know that the Sylvian fight will royally suck. She is without a doubt the hardest encounter in the first game. And what I'm about to do makes the Heartless one look like a joke. So it only made sense to start with Sylvian. I saved right before the fight, anticipating many, many deaths. I even put my ego aside and equipped the Black Steel. Part of what makes this fight so difficult is Sylvian always entangles a party member on the second turn for 2 turns. This is unavoidable except for slicing off all 4 of her tentacles. There is no other way out of this status. For a solo run, this is the single most devastating thing a boss could do. As if that wasn't bad enough, she also inflicts typeless damage. This means you cannot resist her attacks in any way except for guarding. I need every turn I can get though, so that's a non-option. Thankfully, it does mean her attacks don't benefit from phobia multipliers, which means I can run whatever accessory I want. On top of this, you can't really avoid her attacks. She has 4 tentacles, each with a 50% chance to attack per turn. If they do attack, they're guaranteed to hit. If you get really unlucky, she can kill you in just 1 turn. The only way I can sort of resist her attacks is the Old Guardian's Soul, which revives you once before vanishing forever. And again, as if this wasn't enough, there's another gimmick on top of it all. Sylvian starts growing a husk on her first turn. After a few turns, it will take the form of one of the 4 player characters at random. Your starting character has no bearing on this. Each does something different, utilizing various attack elements. So the one thing we can theoretically gear up against, we can't even do reliably. The best option is, coincidentally, Raggy, who's supposed to have an insta-kill coin flip, but it's broken and does nothing. All the others can destroy limbs, which is obviously no good. I tried many strats. I'm sure I died well over 50 times. I learned my accessory slot was the most important piece of equipment here. There were 2 strong options, the White Angel's Soul, freeing up my first turn from using a brown vial, or the aforementioned Guardian Soul to survive being tangled. Either way, my limbs were vulnerable to most of the Husk's attacks. Both strategies were completely at the mercy of RNG, despite my best efforts. I could use Leg Sweep on my first turn to remove the 2 smaller tentacles, but then I would get entangled and had to hope the big tentacles didn't attack too much for 2 turns. Or I could use Locust Swarm to only have to survive 1 turn against 4 tentacles. If they attacked, I died. If I got unlucky with the husks, I died. If I lost both my arms, I died. If I could get just 1 more turn at the start, that would change everything. I could Leg Sweep and cast a Locust Swarm to stun the tentacles. So I took a break to re-examine my options. I knew On Guard fit the bill, but for whatever reason, the skill wasn't working in the void.
Oh, it's not letting me on guard.
I figured it had something to do with that yellow lizard blasting me earlier. It did not, but I had very little to go off of in fairness. Grasping at straws, I loaded an earlier save and tried to determine the cause. During this, I learned you can move while using On Guard.
So I thought this whole time you can move while doing On Guard, which is why I never tried using it. So... fake fan, basically.
Unfortunately, I couldn't figure it out, even if it seemed like something was there. So I had no choice but to press on with my awful strategy. And after a couple hours...
I don't have healing though, do I? I do not. I think I'm dead. Wait, but... exactly enough. I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. I should have chanced it, it seems. I desperately need you to... Ah! Okay. Can it hurt me anymore?
This was a massive victory, but not a satisfying one. It was the equivalent of hitting a slot machine until I hit the jackpot. Hell, you can win practically any challenge with enough luck like that. If I could just get that one extra turn with On Guard, maybe I could earn my victory. I loaded a pass save and got to experimenting. I discovered spamming it while moving seems to hurt you randomly. Weird. But in real news, I narrowed the issue down to when I entered the void. I could stab all I wanted in front of the throne, but as soon as I sat on it, I suddenly couldn't. Same for firing my bow. But no matter what I tried, the ability wouldn't come back. Looking at the code with my limited programming knowledge was no help either. Rather than asking the Discord like a sane person, I instead used Discord's awful search function for any scraps of advice. My social anxiety is very rational. After enough time, I found it. Guys, the fix? The solution? Jump in a hole. Twice in one video, jumping in a random hole fixes things. Why? Before taking off, I wanted to do a few things differently. There was one kill I hadn't really considered up until now. Myself. Or, Raggy. Of course, we need Raggy to complete the run. The only way to pull this off would be some kind of powerful armor set that you could never remove and ensured the death of the wearer. I didn't go for the penance armor sooner because having the flexibility to change my armor was pretty important. The only advantage to the penance armor over the gaunt is limb, face rip, and peck immunity. Things I can get through other means. The stats are otherwise identical. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's probably also the only heavy armor set Enki can equip too. The limb protection is really useful here, and so is the peck protection. Not for Sylvian, but something else. So not only does it net me another kill, it also makes my life easier. Everyone wins. Shut up, Raggy. So we returned to the void, hopped in a nearby hole, and Raggy suddenly remembered how to stab. My ego is saved. Not only can you use On Guard while moving, you can also use it in the middle of text boxes. Thanks to this, if you time it right, it's possible to use it against pretty much every boss. If done right, you get 2 actions before the boss can even strike back. 3 if you add a speed boost. It took me a couple tries to get the On Guard timing down, but once I did, I literally defeated Sylvian on my first try. A far cry from the dozens before it. But again, my ego cried out. I used the black steel. I'm better than that. I don't need it. So I reloaded a save and proved it wasn't necessary. Everything left is trivial in comparison. Both types of molded are easy with my gear, and even the greater blight to an extent. It's a pretty straightforward fight. Max your physical defense, blind to the head, defense stance, leg sweep, chop the big leg, then attack the head. Heal is needed. The only wrinkle left was the blights. Those pterodactyl-looking guys flying about. Oh, and this thing. You may not know this, since bumping into one is really hard, but you can fight the blights. There's 3 in the void. Even if I wasn't missing a leg, they move as quickly as a player with dash, so you can't outrun them. They seem to appear completely at random, and I only have a few torches left. If those run out, I am well and truly boned. If only there was some kind of way I could figure out exactly how they behaved, that would bust this.
So, check this. This right here is one of the spots for them. And so there is a finite number of blights. There are 3 blights. And this guy, what's it? So yeah, there's the fight. But then he has a custom route. So instead of doing a typical behavior, his route is to just move left. Repeat. Infinitely. So I need to find the exact tile he goes on and then just run along there. So basically I'm doing it wrong. Guess. So I'm about here, so I need to go kind of the second lump. Here. Right? Oh my god, I'm brilliant.
The actual fights were easy. You can stun a blight for a turn with a Quah talk option, and the Penance Armor's peck immunity comes in handy here. So I just wailed on their torsos until the fight ended. Also in a normal run, you can make them go away by giving them a yellow vial when talking. But I'm not here to talk. The hard part was just getting to them. They don't move while off screen, so you can't wait for them to do a full loop. You have to meet them where they are, which is really fun in this labyrinth of a map. Thank Ulmer for Phase Step. I truly don't know what I would have done without it here.
No, you... What? Okay.
Now, all that was left was the Yellow King. I read a Book of Enlightenment, then approached. Doesn't the mod make him look cool? This is how he looks in vanilla. Pretty lame. I triggered the fight and prepared to get one final Shit! Well, second time's the charm. I equipped a Soul Devourer necklace this time. Now that I could survive a black orb, I could alternate between attacking and healing. With that, it was just a matter of time until I won. He didn't stand a chance. At long last, victory. So can you kill everything in Fear and Hunger? Technically, no. Unless you don't count Dreamhounds, then yes, actually. Since it's my video, let's just call it a win. Those hounds are stupid anyways. By my count, that tallies up to 162 kills. 174 if you add the cave dwellers from the massacre. That is also counting the 3 Dreamhounds and other subjective non-enemies I'll show on screen. See the description links for my complete list. I tried making a separate list by enemy type and location too, but there's a slight discrepancy in the numbers between them that I absolutely cannot find. So be warned, a mistake was made somewhere. Honestly, I probably missed an enemy somewhere in this playthrough anyways, but at some point, you just have to say it's good enough and move on. I'll include my saves in the description if you want to look for anything I missed. If you can prove it, I'll note my shame in a pinned comment. Without debug tiles or cheats, this run is essentially only possible as Darce. Those starting hounds will otherwise rip you to shreds. Real hounds, not dream hounds. It probably goes without saying, but this isn't a run I'd recommend you play for yourself. Stomping every last cave gnome, ghoul, and spider adds nothing to the experience. And besides, the most interesting parts of this run ended up stemming from my additions to the challenge. Raggy is a terrible character. I basically had the worst starting loadout possible, and a lack of party members with Panopophobia Light made it even worse. But it made for a cool journey and taught me many things, like how this game is a disastrously buggy mess, and if you aren't playing exactly how you're expected to, it's going to fight you every step of the way. If you want, you can see how I dealt with that in the raw footage on my second channel, Connoisseur. I actually recorded my voice this time, and even tried to be a bit entertaining. Be warned that I did my best to dampen the mic peaks, but there's likely some I missed, given there was over 20 hours of footage. There were multiple times I lost my shit. My next video is hopefully going to be an April Fool's special. Failing that, an April special. Failing that, a May special. Failing that, it will be a proper video, just on a very unusual subject. look at my crafted movie video if you're unsure what I mean. Actually, just look at it anyways, because I worked very hard on it and nobody watched it. After that, it's back to business as usual. And that video I referenced in the cut content one is in limbo. I'm hoping to return to it eventually. I know that's vague, but like the April Fool's special, a big part of the appeal is the surprise of the subject matter. I promise it's a fun one. I've run out of things to ramble about though, so I'll let you go. As always, I'd appreciate it if you could support me on all the things, but regardless, have a good day or night, viewer.